Hi guys, welcome back to the James McIntosh Football Podcast. Today I have an extraordinary episode lined up. To be honest, I can't really believe I'm saying this, but I've got a legendary commentator to come on. He's probably best known for his voice in BBC Match of the Day, but if you haven't heard him from there, I'm sure you would have heard him from doing World Cup finals, Euros finals, or you might have even heard him commentating your game of EAFC, formerly known as FIFA, as today I'm joined with one of the biggest commentators in the country. No, I'm not talking about myself, because I'm joined by the legendary voice that is Guy Mowbray. Guy, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Looking forward to the episode.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, James. Absolutely.
Well, Guy, I was just chatting. I think this is going to be probably one of my favourite episodes. It's not often I really get to interview commentators, but for you, I'm guessing this is sort of second nature doing these sorts of podcasts.
It's sort of and sort of not, because I'm used to asking the questions more than answering them. So it's a little bit different. It's the other way around, but always enjoyable. And yeah, never mind talking football with anybody, to be honest.
Well, Guy, how has your break been off, first of all, since you've had a little bit of break from Match of the Day over the summer? Is it hard to switch off over the summer without football, really?
Well, you kind of don't switch off when you're doing this job, and you don't want to, because it's more hobby than job. It's paid hobby, isn't it? That's what it is. So you never really switch off. And to be honest, I have as much as possible. Less travel. That's the one thing. The travel is the one thing that can really tire you out. So there's a lot less of that. But I've been across the Euros under 21s. I've been watching the Club World Cup. I've been sort of doing admin, rounding off my stats for the end of the season, and then starting to prepare the stats for next season. So, the preparation never ends. I've already got my first few games for the start of next season. So, to be honest, I've started prepping those, because better to be ahead of the game, and then you can sort of add as you go on. It never ends, but that's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing, because it's what I love doing.
Well, Guy, in that sense, it's probably one of the strangest jobs in the world, because admittedly, you all love your time off, etc. But for me speaking as well, personally, with that view of being a commentator, you kind of look forward to getting back to the football, don't you? So I do it for a non-league side, but going back to these massive Premier League games, and I think really going into next season, it could be a real good title race. I'd say there's a good 3 or 4 teams in it next season.
Oh, hopefully. It's hard to absolutely say who you would say are the favourites right now. So, the Championship is going to be exceptional as well. It always is. It's one of the best leagues to watch. The Premier League is a bit more of an open. I think the conversation I've had more than any other since the season ended is, are the 3 teams that came up going to go straight back down again? Now, that may be because I live in an area that's dominated by Leeds United supporters, so they're asking the question a lot, and they tend to get a bit disappointed when my answer is, well, I'd like to see them stay up, but let's be honest, who are they going to be better than? And that's when the conversation develops. Name 3 teams or 1 team, and they just have to be better than 3 teams. I guess they have to be better than, and that's where it becomes a little bit difficult. But you never know. I actually don't think all 3 will go down, but I wouldn't like to say which ones will fall and which ones will stay up. And the title race is going to be good, as you said. I'm looking forward to the National League. My team, York, will hopefully go 1 better. Instead of losing in the playoffs, 2 better. We'll go up automatically this time. I hope. Fingers crossed for that. So I'm looking forward to the start of that. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to look forward to, and there's a lot to enjoy in the summer as well.
Definitely, Guy. We'll look at all of that a little bit later in the episode about what you've got lined up this summer, probably next year with the World Cup. So we'll look at all of that a little later in the episode. But Guy, just take me down memory lane. Can you remember your first steps of getting into football and how it really started your journey?
Well, it's been my life, to be honest, as it is for most of us that are involved in any shape or form in the football industry. It's the second best job in the world that I've got, because the best would still be playing. I would swap everything probably for a season as a professional at any level, and that's how I got into it, because I really wanted to be a player and wasn't good enough. So it was the next best thing. I never really got near. Rather foolhardy. I kind of until I was in my 20s, early 20s. I think I still thought in the back of my mind that I might. I don't know why. I think I still thought maybe, but So I started doing what I'm doing. It was almost a throwaway line from my father. He kind of said once, "Look, you're not going to get paid for playing football, but there are other avenues. You know this game so well. You've got so many contacts. Why don't you try and get paid for watching it?" And it was literally a light bulb in my head. Okay, right. Never really thought about that. Or maybe I had in the back of my mind. I don't know. But so then all my energies went into trying to find an opening into doing that, and through a lot of determination, a lot of belligerence, trying to get your foot in the door, and a lot of luck, because there's a lot of that involved. I got started, and the journey began, and there's all manner of ways of getting into this industry. There is no right or wrong way. There is no set path. And I think fundamentally the one thing is, can you do it? Can you do it? Even if you've got all the qualifications to suggest that you can, the proof only comes into when you actually start doing it. And then you find out. So it's a long time ago now. I mean, the first game I covered was back in 1993. So
Wow.
we're talking 32 years of doing this now. So never know, I might have another 32. I doubt it, but I'll take it if it comes.
Well, let's hope, Guy, because I'm sure a lot of the listeners watching at home would have loved your commentaries in all the BBC games, etc. But I thought it was actually interesting, Guy, when reading one of your interviews you did with the BBC, because you actually mentioned you really did get into the industry for actually just writing a load of letters to industry standard professionals. So I think you said you wrote over 100 different letters to these people trying to get in. And I mean, to be fair, I sort of did the same today with the hope of getting you on the podcast. But I suppose when you were doing all these different emails, I've learned a lot of it when they do come back to you. I think they sort of admire the confidence that you have gone out, reached to them, and they sort of admire that confidence to approach them. Did you find that yourself when you did eventually get accepted by at least that one person?
I don't know. I suppose, you're just hoping for a bite. That's, it's a little bit like fishing. Throw everything in and hope that something bites, and then hold on to it. And then try and do the right things, and be courteous, and be as professional as you can be, even though you probably know nothing about what you're doing at that stage. You learn as you go on. But this wasn't even email. This was prior to emails. Nobody back then or very few people had actually a home PC or anything like that. So I actually physically wrote handwritten letters.
Blimey,
And
I bet that was
and
painful.
I was so naive. I was so naive. I sent them to all the top broadcasters, local radio stations, but never mind local radio stations, I mean national and television companies, and it was so naive of me, really, looking back. But yeah, eventually, I got a bite. My first start was actually in Club Call, which a lot of younger listeners and viewers will not know what that is. But Club Call used to be a service. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was a service whereby you'd ring up on the telephone, and it would have been a landline at home. Nobody had mobiles then, and you would listen to news and reports from your team, and sometimes commentaries. And the bigger teams had commentaries on all their games, and it was a premium rate, so it cost a lot of money to be on the phone per minute. But they needed reporters to cover games, so I started out with Club Call, doing teams in my area, and then from then on moved into local radio, and from then on into more national things, and television went on from there. So it was a natural sort of steady progression. But for Club Call these days, I guess every local club has its own kind of internet streaming services and what have you. So there are still the opportunities. In fact, there are probably more opportunities now than there were back then, because there's so much more football that's available to watch.
It's interesting you mention that, because I was just about to ask you on that. Now, with anyone really wanting to try and get into sports journalism, I mean, there's so many different routes now you can sort of get into the industry, whether it's going through a mainstream route, such as BBC for an apprenticeship like that, Sky Sports, etc. But the way I've sort of got into the industry is actually working my way up through non-league, so doing different pieces of commentary for, well, my local non-league teams. But I've noticed quite a few people do that across the country, and that's how they sort of build their experience. But when you first started getting into it, I mean, like you were saying there, you didn't really have those smaller teams doing nowhere near as much coverage even. So how hard was it trying to really get your name out there, especially?
Yeah, I mean, so long ago, it's hard to think how hard it was. It just kind of happened. I was looking at my team, York City. We're a football league team then, and will be again soon, very very soon. And so we had a club call service, and that's where it started from me. And local radio, I had Minster FM, which is no more now, but that was the local independent station, BBC Radio York. So you do a little bit helping out for them as well, and so that's how I did it. And it was kind of my one bit of advice I'd give to anybody is just don't say no. If an opportunity comes along, don't say no. Say yes and figure out if you can do it later. And try and move heaven and earth to do it. Because if you say no, somebody else will say yes, and you never know. That door might be closed forever. They might be good at it, and that's it. That's one opportunity gone. And as you say, when it's hard to get an opportunity, you need to make sure you grab hold of one when it comes. So yeah, I don't know if it was harder. It was just different back then. And I would say, as you say, covering local football, getting miles on the clock, getting experience of doing it. And just naturally, I wouldn't even say you're thinking consciously about how to get better. And you're not even thinking consciously, you're just doing it. And with the experience of doing it and getting miles on the clock, you will get better, or you'll certainly change and you'll find your own self. Don't copy anybody else. And you'll just be able to do it. And that is definitely the best way of doing it. Miles on the clock is the most essential thing of all.
Definitely, and I think, that's quite a good bit of advice, like you were saying there. You sort of just do it subconsciously when you do get into the commentary, and I suppose you just pick up on different things as you go along, really. But can you remember your first game of doing the commentary? Was it smooth sailings?
Oh no, well, it would have been dreadful. It would have been absolutely dreadful. The first game I covered as a reporter was York against Brentford in October 1993.
Oh, wow.
York lost 2-0, weren't very good that day. 3 or 4 of the players were my mates as well, which made it a little bit different. Made it a bit easier in a way because there was a bit of familiarity there. But I wouldn't like to hear a recording of that. There won't be one existing, but it would have been absolutely dreadful. But I must have done something right because, from shadowing somebody that day and doing a bit, they said the following week, right, you're on your own, you can do one next week. And wow, okay, yeah, fine. Interviewing at the end of the games, that was, that's something that I have no skills in. I still don't think I've got great skills in that, to be honest. That's not my thing. You try your best, and again, you learn on the job where to go, where not to go, what to ask, where not to ask, and stuff like that. So it's a harsh learning curve. You get some very very harsh lessons dealt you along the way.
Oh, 100%.
I'm still learning now, and yeah, that's hard, but yeah, that first one won't have been good. First commentary, that bit of commentary I did, I think it was Leeds against Aston Villa again for club call. So a big game, and I'll have done bits. I wouldn't have done a lot of it, but I did bits. And again, it would have been dreadful, really, thinking back. But you do what you think's right. And what you've got to remember, I think, amongst all of it, is it's not about you. It's never ever about you. You are providing a service. If you're doing commentary, particularly when there's pictures as well, but particularly when it's audio only, radio or streaming. You are basically the eyes and ears of somebody who would like to be there, but they can't be, and that's why they're listening to it. By definition, if you're listening to it, you'd probably like to be there, you're interested in it. So you are the descriptive force. When I started doing BBC Radio York in the early days, I covered a bit of rugby league, and I remember getting a lovely letter from a chap who was basically registered blind, and it was so nice. I still have it somewhere, and he basically said, "You are my entertainment on a Sunday afternoon. I get a can of beer out the fridge and I sit in my favourite armchair, and I open the windows so I can, feel a bit of air and what have you. And I'm at the game because your words bring the game to me, and that was so nice to hear. And television's a little bit different. Television is a different sort of skill set. But again, you've got to be an accompaniment to the match without dominating it, without getting on people's nerves, although that is unavoidable at times. It's the nature of the job. You try not to desperately. But you are merely sort of a small part of it, an important part of it for viewers and listeners, but you're a small part of it. The game itself is the only thing that matters. And I have been quoted as saying, and I got the Mickey take now, only for saying it a little bit, but I still stand by it to some extent. A good commentator should be, in a way, like a good referee, in that if they're having a good game, you don't really notice them. They're just an accompaniment to the match. And okay, if there's big moments, make sure you get them right and make sure they sound good. But basically, you just
Guys, sorry about the pause there. I mean, Guy, we were speaking about how you were looking at starting your own commentary, well, own podcast, really. I mean, that's some of the issues you probably face, the issues of online recording, etc. But no, you left us all on a cliffhanger. Forget working with BBC Match of the Day. Might be good with EastEnders with a cliffhanger. Might just tell us all about the comparison then between the referee and the commentator.
Yeah, it's just something that I think, and a lot of people have disagreed with this, but I personally think a good commentator is a little bit like a good referee, in that you only notice them if they're having a bad game. If you're having a good game, you are merely complimenting the game and being a part of it. It's always the game that is first and foremost, not you. So that's basically why I see it that way. If you're having a bad one, you can really get on people's nerves, and you say we're referees, isn't it? So if they're having a good one, everything goes smoothly and fine, and nobody even talks about them, and that's kind of how it should be.
No, definitely. I mean, to be fair, it's interesting you say that because some of the things I see on social media, they sort of replicate what you were saying there when you hear about people being appointed in different areas for, well, different companies really when it comes to commentary. But one big question I did want to ask you actually, obviously you're renowned for doing the TV coverage of BBC. How does that juxtapose with what you were doing with radio? Because I actually think, weirdly enough, radio is probably harder than what you do with TV now.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I would say radio. I'm not saying it's easier. It's just different. They're just very, very different. Radio, you are more descriptive. There's a little bit more leeway. Um, you're basically saying what you see, but doing it in an entertaining and accurate way as well. Television, you don't say what you see. If you do, you can't help it sometimes. We've moved more towards that actually in recent years, where people do tend to go a bit too many words for me. I try not to when I can. Um, you are adding things. You've got to be able to add something to the pictures. That's the thing with TV commentary. You've got to be able to add something to the pictures. Don't just say what you see, because people can see it. That's the very nature of it. So you've got to be able to add something and make it interesting, make it relevant, and that's what you've got to be sort of conscious of in a subconscious way, and that's the way of doing it. So I wouldn't say one's easier than the other. They're just very, very different in how you approach them.
Interesting, yeah. Because, like you were saying there, so you came through the ranks really. I'd say the big break for you probably was when you did join Metro, because I'm pretty sure you did win an award there. So just tell us a bit about the award you got for, I think it was the playoff game when Charlton took on Sunderland, I'm pretty sure it might have been. But yeah, just tell us a bit about that and how that
That was
really
a
probably boosted your career.
long, long time ago. Last award I ever won. So there we are. That tells you something. That was back in that was for the '98 playoff final, but it wasn't just for that. It was for the whole body of work over the season really, and we won best sports content basically on radio. We beat the Nationals as a station from the northeast. We beat all the national radio stations, which was great. And I was just part of the team covering Sunderland games and Newcastle games, and I was very lucky to work with some really good people that made it easy for me, that made it fun, and I still think that's the most fun time I've ever had doing this job. Covering every Sunderland match at home and away for a few seasons, a great time. They were up, they were down, they were up, they were down. They were a little bit like they are now, to be honest, or they may be in the future again. And the football was great to watch. Peter Reid's team was so exciting. It was such a good team with Niall Quinn and Kevin Phillips as a wonderful strike partnership, fed by Alan Johnston and Nicky Summerby, wonderful wingers, flying fullbacks. Tell you what, that team would do pretty well today, to be honest. It really would.
Yeah.
So they were great times, and I had such good fun doing it. And any awards or anything just came as a byproduct of them, because you couldn't fail to do well at that job if you were doing it, because it was just so entertaining and such good fun. And we took a few liberties, we had a few laughs, we pushed the boundaries a little bit, not through devilment or deliberately. It was just purely because I was quite raw. I didn't really know what I was doing, so we took a few chances, it seems, and people seem to like it. So, and people, it's really nice when I go back up to Sunderland, and I will be going there very, very soon again. Thank goodness. Um, People still talk about it, and when you think, I haven't done a commentary for Metro since '99, 2000, so that's a long, long time ago. But people still ask me about it now, and it's still something I look back on with huge, huge fondness.
I thought it was really interesting there how you mentioned you were having fun on the commentary as well. I feel like
Oh yeah.
sometimes you do notice a lot in the industry where you get these commentators and you can sort of tell when they're trying to mimic other commentators and they're not really being their true selves. Did you find it hard trying to really, I suppose, show your real persona in front of the microphone rather than trying to copy anyone else or trying to be a fake version of you, I suppose?
Not really, because I can only speak for myself. I don't know how other people approach it, and not really. It just you have to be yourself. It's the only way of doing it. You just have to be yourself. And it's 2 hours. If you take just the game itself, never mind the sort of the pre stuff and the post stuff. The game itself is nigh on 2 hours or an hour and three quarters of action, and little bits of filler. And that's unscripted broadcasting. So you can't be anything other than be yourself to do it properly. And let's face it, you are just talking about something that's happening in front of you. So there's no time to be putting on an act or trying to imitate anybody. So no, I find that very, very easy. That's just be natural. Just be totally natural. And occasionally you'll say something, you'll think, well, where's that come from? That comes to me when you try maybe to pre-script things, which I haven't done for 3 decades. Maybe in the early days I might think, if this happens today, I might say this. And by the time, if something, for a start, that won't happen today, because nothing in a game of football ever pans out exactly as you might imagine it would.
Yeah.
And if you do, we're not actors. You won't get it right. It won't sound good. And then you'll beat yourself up for ages over doing it. So basically, no, react in the moment. It's the only way to do it.
Well, Guy, you were clearly doing a top job when you were growing up. I mean, I'd say your first really big TV break probably came when you were working with Eurosport. I mean, you had a great first year there, and it sort of led to you doing the World Cup coverage for a lot of it. So could you just tell us how you really got working with Eurosport and whether that really was your big break, I suppose?
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It was one of the many, many letters that I wrote when I started out. And then once I've been doing the job on a local level for a while, again, things were changing, things were moving and changing in where I was working. So I had to look for something else. And again, I sort of reverted to working out who I should get in touch with and sending out a letter. And this time accompanying them, because I've been doing it for a while, with a bit of a demo tape. A little bit of an example of what I did. And again, Simon Reed, who was the head of commentary at Eurosport and a brilliant commentator in his own right on tennis and ice skating and all manner of other things, he very generously got back in touch with me and said, look, I like listening to this. Come and have a chat with me. I went down to London and had a chat with him, and he said, we'll see what we can do. And then within a couple of weeks of that, he'd give me my first job for Eurosport, and that again was learning on the job. It was, oh my word, the adrenaline. It was live television. It was happening very, very quickly, and you just had to do it. There was no thinking. You just had to do it, and it came down to, could you do it or could you not do it? And just over a year after I started there, I was doing that in conjunction with working on radio here as well. So it was a very busy time. It's probably the hardest I've ever worked and the most fun I've ever had. And they got the World Cup was in France basically in 1998, and as a French host broadcaster, they were very prominent in that. So I got to a lot of World Cup games, including the final that year. So that was wonderful. That was certainly a big opportunity. That was the first television work that I did, and got great memories of it. And Eurosport has just this year just ceased to exist. I wouldn't say that, but it's all part of the TNT network now. They're owned by TNT Discovery, so it's all part of them. Still getting the same content, still getting the same great football coverage. So more power to them.
Definitely. I mean, you mentioned there about getting that call up to the World Cup. I actually had Terry Butcher on probably a year ago, and he mentioned how he got a phone call from the gaffer. How did you find out you were going to be getting a call to get to the World Cup then?
That was exactly it. Yeah, the secretary in the office rang me and told me my schedule, and it was wow, brilliant. This is going to be amazing, and it was amazing. It was fabulous. I mean, it wasn't big budget stuff. It still hasn't become big budget stuff ever, it seems, but it's really good. It was really good. It was such good fun. And fully enough, that World Cup would have been the first time I met Terry Butcher, because I remember he was working for
Wow.
radio. He was working for radio, and I remember being in Marseille. I was commentating on a game alongside Brian Robson, and a couple of rows in front of us, there was Terry doing the game for radio, which would have been Radio 5, I guess, back then. And I remember talking to him and being a little bit in awe of Brian, who I was working with, who was obviously a legend of the game, and then Terry Butcher as well. Two players I'd grown up idolising. So Yeah, it was not. It was that was really nice, and that's one of the joys of doing the job now. You know, you get to meet and know, and in many cases be friends with people you've grown up admiring, and then 99 times out of 100 you find out they're even nicer in real life, and you really like them. So yeah, that's one of the beauties of the job.
Oh, to be fair, I had that question lined up for later in the episode, but I think it's probably a good time to ask it now. Because I just wonder, really. I mean, when I hear you doing commentary, you're often alongside legends of the game. So you'll just be casually having a chat with Alan Shearer in the commentary box, talking back to, I don't know, Gary Lineker, etc., Alex Scott of Football Focus. Do you ever just pinch yourself and think, wow, I'm just casually having chats with some of the greatest in the game?
Again, no, you don't, because it's just natural. It's just something that you're doing. But maybe very very occasionally you might just allow yourself a moment and think about it. And if you do, it's quite a nice thing to do. Just think about it and go, oh, this is great. This is great. My contributions to football are being recognised is a bit too grand of saying it, but I'm talking at the same level of people that have done this to the highest level of all, and that's a really nice thing actually. That shows you can do it in some way. But again, it's not about you. It's always about what you're watching and what you're talking about. So whilst it's nice to take a moment every now and again, and you probably should. It's probably good for you. You don't really have time to, and it's not something you think about day to day.
Well, let's take you back again to the World Cup. I mean, from what I can see on YouTube, etc., I wasn't actually born at that point, obviously, so I've seen quite a few highlights of it. One player I do want to pick out is Zinedine Zidane. I'm sure you would have done a commentary on him. What was he like to watch live in person?
Wonderful. For many many years, as the greatest player I've ever seen live in the flesh.
Wow.
I would say he did things that you would only see on FIFA, on FC
Mm.
24, 25. He did things that were just. In fact, you couldn't even do it on there. You wouldn't get your fingers and thumbs in the right configuration to be able to do it properly. He did things and made them look graceful. It was almost like ballet on a football field. He was so, for a big man as well. He was a
Yeah.
big man. He was solid, but goodness me, he was so graceful to watch. And yeah, because of that World Cup, I think he was my favourite player of all time for many many years. Is he still? Possibly, yes. But in latter years, I've been lucky enough to see, Lionel Messi in the flesh. And funny enough, that's been a slow burner with me, because I've seen Messi many, many times. But I think I was a bit of a jinx, because whenever I saw him, he didn't really stand out. Well, I saw him on the television, obviously he did, but actually live at games, at Barcelona games and at Argentina games, at World Cups. For a while, I never seemed to do a game where Messi was outstanding. And then I think probably in 2014 to an extent, 2014 in Brazil, and then 2018 in Russia, and then the last one in Qatar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's when I really thought, oh yeah, this guy's the greatest there's ever been, and will be for quite. I don't think anybody will be overtaking him for some time to come.
Well, to be fair, I am looking forward to getting on to that point a little bit later in the episode, the 2022 World Cup. Wow, I bet that would have been a fun one to commentate on. But let's take you back to the first World Cup final you did commentate on. That was with Eurosport, and I did read somewhere that I think you were the youngest person to ever cover a World Cup final. I mean, that must have been special.
I'm not sure it's true. Um, I'm like you. I've just read it somewhere, but I don't think there's a great deal of verification for that. So I don't really pay much attention to that at all. I was 26 years old, which yes is very very young to be doing it. But to be honest, I'm sure there have been others for other networks around the world. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to that.
Was there quite a bit of trepidation going into that World Cup final at such a young age, covering probably the biggest match, of the
Yeah,
4 years?
but it is. Every 4 years. It is the biggest match in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, there will have been. Before every game, to be honest, it's still the same now. Before every single game I commentate on, there's a few nerves and butterflies and trepidation. Yeah, absolutely. But it is almost no different to any other game. You just got to make sure you get it right. And I've done plenty of others in the build up to that. So it's funny, isn't it? The end of season games, the end of tournament games are in a way some of the easier ones, because you've seen the teams involved many times. You've got notes on them that you've just updated over the games that you've done. So there's actually not as much pre-prep to do, which it feels counterintuitive, but it's the same every time, and it catches you by surprise every time. You feel as if you should be doing more, and there's nothing more to do. So you've just got to hope that the game takes care of itself and that you get it right at that point. And I'm guessing, I can't remember, but I'm guessing it was the same in '98. And our attention was actually distracted from what we might be thinking before the game, because you might not know this, but there was a great controversy before the game, because the great Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo, Brazil #9 Ronaldo, who was the star of the tournament, suddenly wasn't in the team sheet. He wasn't playing in the final. And we didn't know why. We couldn't find out why. Edmundo was listed as on the starting team sheet. I have still got the team sheet. It might be worth something one day. I don't know. I've got the printed FIFA team sheet from the game, and Edmundo is on it, not Ronaldo. And this was one of the highlights of my life, and still is actually. We had behind us Brazilian television. And so I was working with Trevor Stephen, who was a former Everton and Rangers and Marseille and England winger, and a very fine player, played at the 1986 World Cup in Mexico. And so we said, Ronaldo's not playing, what's this? And Trevor almost jokingly to me said, ask him. So I looked behind, and Pele was sitting behind me. You know, prior to Messi, the greatest player there's ever been, and a mythical man. And he's sitting behind me, so I just turned around and I just said, actually I'm taking the credit. Trevor turned around, I daren't. So Trevor turned around and said, excuse me, Ronaldo, is he playing? And Pele sort of gave us this serene nod and said, yes, he plays. And within about 10 minutes of that, there's a flurry of activity, and the revised team sheets came out, and Ronaldo indeed was starting. And they blamed the mix-up, etc. Well, history then tells us that, no, it wasn't right. He wasn't fit. He'd had some sort of medical episode. We still don't know. I don't think we know the official version, but he'd had some sort of medical episode the night before. He wasn't right. He clearly faded. And I can't remember when, but he certainly got substituted. And he faded, and France won 3-0 and were deserved winners of the World Cup that they hosted. But so that was the build-up to that final. So there was so much going on. You didn't have time. It was quite good. You just had to do your job. You didn't have time really to think about it.
Well, forget about the millions watching at home, Guy. I think I would have been more nervous having Pele listening behind me. That
He
isn't.
wasn't listening. He was doing his own job. He wouldn't have been listening. But it was. I've got a picture somewhere of myself and Trevor, and we're sort of. It's a nice picture to have of me and Trevor, but we're sort of leaning, and we're leaning to make sure we've got a glimpse of Pele in the background of the picture, and you can just about see him.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Try and do, like you said there, sneaky little selfie. I mean, wow, that's awesome though. I mean, like I was saying there, I'm sure you would have had millions tune into that final as well. But the one big thing, probably that did happen during that final is, obviously there would have been loads of British people in France who wouldn't have been able to get that final ticket. So I would imagine a lot of the big people would have been watching you do the commentary because, well, I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? You wouldn't have the likes of ITV, BBC being broadcasted with that one, with it being in France.
I don't know. Possibly. Certainly in France, unless you're watching it in French language on TF1, we'd have been the network to watch at the
Yeah.
time. But yeah, and I think, and it went out as highlights as well. I remember that. So maybe people back in the hotel rooms watched it again later. So that might have been helpful. I have no idea about that, but it was certainly a wonderful thing to be a part of, and I'm proud to say that was my first World Cup attended, and I've been to every one since. So long may that continue.
Does it always stay just as special as that first World
Oh
Cup?
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's the best thing, and the Euros isn't far behind. But it is the World Cup is my favourite thing in the world. I've been so excited about next summer to come. Although the Club World Cup's been a bit of an eye opener.
Yeah.
There might have to be some changes before next summer because we don't want a drab tournament. We don't want a tournament to be affected by 2-hour delays to games because of storm weather. So I think FIFA have got quite a bit to do to make sure that runs smoothly, and I'm looking forward to it as much as ever, but it might be a bit different.
While we're on that note, actually, you've just raised quite an interesting point there because I'm not sure if you saw what happened with the Chelsea game. There was 5 minutes left of the game. I mean, I don't think it went on until, well, must have been an extra hour added on because Benfica got a late goal. But
Yeah.
imagine that happens in the World Cup with one of the big games. I
Well,
mean,
I think the
surely
game.
five
Yeah,
minutes.
I think the Chelsea game finished something like 5 hours after the start time. That's when it
Exactly,
actually
yeah.
finished.
Mad.
And only 5 minutes to go, but there we are. That is US legislation, and when there are storms within a certain radius, they have to stop. We see it in golf quite regularly, don't we, where
Yeah.
the hooter goes off and players have to leave the course. And obviously those rules are in place for a reason. They're much more extreme weather than we have in the UK. So I guess they had to do it, but that does raise a fundamental question about where World Cups are staged, because unless you're willing to accept that, it's going to be a hard thing for people to get their heads around.
Well, you'll be working some very long shifts if it isn't fixed in time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But returning back to your personal career at that point, because I'm pretty sure the work you did with Eurosport, I'm pretty sure it did win you another award at the Royal TV Awards, that being the best newcomer. Do you think that was really the avalanche in for you getting the next job at ITV?
Yeah, it would undoubtedly have helped. It would undoubtedly have helped. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Again, that was the last radio award I ever won. This was the last TV award I ever won. So maybe I've got work to do. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was just a really nice thing to happen. Yeah, and that was just for commentating at a World Cup, which, blimey, that was an award in itself, to be honest. So didn't need anything else really, but I've still got it. I've still got it here actually.
Wow,
Yeah, there we are.
it's quite a nice award actually, isn't
Very
it?
nice. It's very nice, and I'm lucky actually to have it, because I know most TV companies, when somebody wins one of these, they kind of keep it in the reception of the TV company. I know
Yeah.
at BBC, I know in the BBC Sports Department there's a cabinet full of these that nothing to do with me, any of them, but yeah, it's quite nice to have one at home.
Well, definitely. I mean, you said about it there, probably helping with you getting a job at ITV. I can't imagine the phone call you would have got when you did eventually find out you would be joining ITV. I mean, probably them and BBC, the biggest two in the country.
It was hard actually. It was really difficult because I had a really wonderful job, two jobs. I was working for Eurosport and for Metro Radio still, covering every Sunderland game, and honestly, it was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, because I didn't really want to leave those jobs, and I could have stayed and carried on doing what I was doing, and sometimes I think, should I have done? But no, obviously not. You make a decision and that's it.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I had 5 years at ITV Sport, and again, learning the ropes at a different sort of place, a different way of doing things, and yeah, I learnt so much there as well. I mean, that's where I learnt just every manner of how football on television works, really, and with some great people. So yeah, great times again.
You mentioned great people there. I mean, at the time, you had some legendary commentators working with ITV. Peter Drury, who's now with Sky Sports. Who was he? You've got loads of big ones there. What was it like being in the company of them?
I was learning from them all the time. You know, Clive Tilsley was a great influence on me, and Peter Brackley, who's no longer with us, but a wonderful man. He used to do Football Italia on Channel 4, and he was a great guy, very talented. Peter, who I obviously talk to regularly and see regularly, who's a great friend and colleague. John Champion as well.
Yeah.
JC was there, so and we had a natural bond being York City supporters, so that helped. That's the thing I'm most proud of, the fact that, you know, at mainstream network television, and there were two of us who were dyed-in-the-wool York fans, and I think that's great. A small club, they're massive, but, you know, a perceived small club, and yet, you know, two of us are there, and we're flying the flag quite proudly. Yeah, I loved it, and I learned so much. I learned in the background how to edit games, which, you know, then going on to do Match of the Day was a big help in how you commentate. Again, just a natural thing that you learn, but I think it helps in how you have your style, and how to edit games, what to say, what not to say, disciplines. Yeah, and I'm covering Champions League for 5 years, which is a wonderful thing to do as well. And I would probably still be, well, who knows, you can't say anything in this industry, everything changes, but you never know. If they hadn't lost the rights in 2004, I might still be at ITV now, but the BBC then got the rights back to the Premier League, and as Premiership as it was then, Premier League as it's been most of the time, and they've had them ever since, and obviously I'm delighted about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll look at how you got onto BBC in a minute, but you said about learning the ropes there. You also said about it earlier in the podcast about how, I don't know, you've learnt quite a bit of, well, how you go along really. It's more about experience, if anything. One thing I did want to really heavily speak about is doing those post-match interviews like you were saying there. With the Premiership ones, I mean, the commentator usually has to do the post-match interviews with the players and managers after the game. You said it's always been a bit of a struggle, but doing it with Premier League ones, I could imagine that would definitely be a struggle. You've got some great characters in there, but
Oh,
ones I'm not too sure if I would want to interview if they had a loss after the game.
well, win or lose doesn't really matter. They've got an obligation to do it, and they're under a massive amount of pressure at that point. They don't really want to be doing it then, but they have to. It's in the contract, and so they can be a little bit crotchety with you sometimes. But that's up to you. That's up to you how you manage it and the questions you ask. And the hardest bit about it actually is you've got to fly down from wherever you have been doing the commentary. So you're usually way up 10 flights of stairs, or you're in the top tier somewhere, or even hanging from a roof with the old style grounds. And you've got to get down, fight your way through the crowds, and get into the interview area. And sometimes they're there waiting for you, and a microphone's given to you, and you have to start. And
Blimey.
a hard bit for me after commentary is you have a little block. I have a block of
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes where I actually can't process what I've just seen. And I have to be sort of reminded what happened then, what happened. You've been concentrating for 90 minutes plus on your own words, and then suddenly you've got to translate them into questions, and that I still find incredibly difficult to do. The best reporters are the ones that are there for that job, and are watching the game and able to get some ideas of what to ask as the game goes on. We don't have that luxury, so I find it very hard. And so please bear with us when sometimes the interviews aren't of the greatest maybe quality, or we don't ask the thing that you really want to know, because sometimes it's just not in there. We try.
Yeah.
And I'm indebted to the Premier League managers for being so accommodating with us. Most of them kind of seem to understand that and are tolerant as a result. I've had loads of run-ins with loads of them over the years, but none of them have been anything that's been a grudge. None of them have been remembered. It's done and dusted in the blink of an eye. It is a very high pressure environment, and that's what you've always got to understand. I feel for them more than I feel for me doing that job. I would change the ruling actually. I know the Premier League have a ruling where the broadcasters have to have their TV interviews sort of within 15 minutes of full time. I think
Yeah.
that's the official rule. I don't like that. One, because it's a bit of pressure on us having to get down and do it, but also two, I'd prefer a manager who's had a bit more time to calm down, to again get their own heads around what they've seen. Presumably that doesn't make as good television because they want them volatile, they want them on the edge. I don't like that because I don't find it comfortable. I'd rather have a considered view, maybe 3/4 of an hour later. That would suit me fine, but I don't think I'm going to change it.
I've got to ask about that actually when it does come down to interviewing managers and probably players as well with this question. Obviously, I mean, the game's renowned for having some real loud icons of the games who have been managers. So, Jose Mourinho, I'm sure he would have been quite a feisty one to interview. Even Pep Guardiola in some sense. But one thing I have started to notice now, you often see the younger managers coming through, like Will Steele of Southampton, Fabian Hersler of Brighton. They seem to be a lot more relaxed and cool when doing these post-match interviews. Do you think it's starting to change now from when they were growing up, being more media trained, as opposed to those icons of the game who weren't really too afraid to say what they were really thinking?
I don't think any of them are still afraid to say what they're thinking. It's just more of them maybe are more aware of it because they've grown up with it, and they've grown up in the social media age where everybody's a reporter, where anything you say can be out there. So I think you're right. I think it is changing, but I wouldn't take anything away from the old guard in quotes either. Jose Mourinho will always be one of my favourite people to interview because he would do it for you. You'd come up with a question, but he would already have in mind what he wanted to say, what message he wanted to get out. So the question actually was irrelevant. So half the time you'd go maybe half prepared because you've just done the commentary, so you're not fully prepared, but it doesn't matter. He would do the work for you because he would say what he wanted to say anyway, regardless of what the question was. And the best ones I always found did that. They would turn it around to what they wanted to talk about. It's always interesting. It always keeps you on your toes, but it's still not something I particularly enjoy doing, I would say.
Who would you say is the worst, well, not worst,
I
hardest
wouldn't ever
person
answer that
to
question.
interview?
Never answer that question because people have good days, people have bad days. You take as you find.
Interesting, actually, yeah. Because, well, like I said, when I do it with Gosport, I mean, even the nicest managers, they can just switch sometimes. And
Of
then when you
course.
get off the recording, you'll just be high-fiving each other like
Absolutely,
nothing's happened.
absolutely. And that's the thing to remember, yeah.
But yeah, I suppose it just comes down to the thing. Everyone's really human, and it's actually quite interesting. I had one of the coaches tell me this. Everyone sits on the same toilet, and to be fair, that quote stuck with me the most actually. When
Yeah.
you're doing these big interviews, I mean, it's probably the best bit of advice, really. I
It's good
mean,
advice. It's good advice
yeah.
for life, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, definitely. But let's move on to your time now with BBC. So you mentioned there you had a great stint with ITV, but when the coverage went, it did go to BBC. Did you know straight away you wanted to try and get to BBC? Because I would still imagine it would have been quite a hard one to get to with such a big transition at the company at the time.
I didn't have a choice because my contract was up and there wasn't enough football to offer me. So I again was very very lucky in that Paul Armstrong, who was the editor of Match of the Day at the time, approached me and said, "Look, we're changing." And again, I was right place, right time because they changed the format, and it's the same format to this day, and it always will be now. I'm pretty sure in that Match of the Day and the Premiership on ITV as it was, they basically only had cameras at 3 games each weekend,
Yeah.
each Saturday. And those 3 games were on, regardless of if all three might have been 0-0. But they were on, they were the games, because that's where the main cameras were. The others, maybe in the old days, they didn't have cameras there at all, and you'd be left with a roundup. The great Bob Wilson would round things up on Match of the Day and say, and in other news, well, for example, Manchester United won at Aston Villa today and the goal scorers were, and then there'd be still photos of the goal scorers on the screen and just be telling you what happened. Then we evolved to, here are the goals from the other games, but it would literally be single camera coverage, so we only get one angle of it and no replays sort of thing. Almost like you see on the news, done as a sort of
Yeah.
narration. And then they changed it, and basically it came to the point the Premier League now was so big that all the games were broadcast around the world. So there was full camera layout at every single match. So the BBC said, right, well, if there's 8 games on a Saturday, and very rarely more than 8, they'll all be on. The highlights of them all will be on. So they needed more people to do it. So they approached me to come and be part of the team, which was great, and I've been there ever since. First game I did was Southampton, Villa against Southampton, Villa Park. I don't remember. I do that many games. I don't remember them per se,
Yeah.
but I remember that one. It was my first one, and Villa won 2-0, and Darius Vassell and Carlton Cole got the goals for Villa.
Wow.
The managers were David O'Leary and Paul Sturrock. I remember nearly everything about that one, but funnily enough, if you ask me 90% of the games last season, I probably won't off the top of my head. But that one I do. I couldn't tell you where I was the week after. I think it was Everton. It may have been Blackburn. I had no idea who they were playing and no idea what the score was. But that first one I do remember. And that of course, was the start of the phenomenon of the Match of the Day running order debate as well. Because in the old days, when there was only 3 cameras, 3 games, they were on. But then we got to the point of, well, they're all on. Which order are they going to be on in? And that's a thing in itself.
It's interesting you say that actually. It's always been a question I've had when it does come to Match of the Day, that running order. Because obviously they're always trying to send the main commentators to the biggest games. So, I mean, if there was a big Manchester derby, I would imagine you would go to it. But let's say it is a real dull 0-0 game, which we never hope for really, unless it is a good 0-0 game. But you have, I don't know, maybe Southampton versus Leicester, and it's a 9-goal thriller of some sort.
Yeah,
How
well,
would they pick which one to go, or
that's
which one
simple.
to show first?
It's simple. In that case, that's first on, and the dull 0-0 is last on. It is quite simple. There is no bias to it whatsoever. It is the only way you could maybe say there's any sort of bias, and it's not going purely on scores. Is what the editor has got to think is, what's the game that people want to watch? What's the game that people want to see highlights of? And that's the thing that they've got to factor in. So with the best will in the world, from a standing start, if there are 2 games that are both 1-1, for example, if one involves Manchester United and one involves, and I don't want to be disparaging, another team, I'll just say another team, that isn't as
Yeah.
big as Manchester United, the United game would probably go on before it, because of the nature of history of football, basically, and more people being fans of that club. But there is no bias other than that. There is none whatsoever. It goes on you're more likely to be on first or last if you're well, you're more likely to be on first or higher up the order if you are either at the top of the table or at the bottom of the table. If you're in mid-table, especially in the second half of the season, if you're just scrabbling around in mid-table, you're probably not as interesting unless you're a fan of that club. But what you have to remember with Match of the Day is we're not vehicles for any particular club. It's the whole thing. It is the story of the day. And it doesn't matter. If I'm at X game or Y game, if my game's rubbish, it's on last. If my game's good, it's somewhere higher up. In the first season, in the first few weeks of Match of the Day, actually, there was a classic case in point. This is back in 2004. There was a game between Norwich and Middlesbrough, which, from a standing start, looking at the 8 games that were played that day, that was probably going to be on last. It finished 4-4, and it was on first. And rightly so. And it's still done on that basis today. It's still done purely on that basis today. Paul Armstrong, the former editor, he wrote a fabulous book. He's a writer these days, and he wrote a fabulous book which I'd recommend to anybody with an interest in football on television, called Why We Always End Last. And it's a brilliant read because he lets you into a few of the secrets and how he coped, or in some cases didn't cope, with the avalanche of email he used to get every Monday morning accusing him of this, that and the other. Accusing him of being a fan of every team in the country while simultaneously hating every team in the country. It's a neat trick, by the way. He doesn't. He never did.
Well, yeah, I'll definitely have to try and get that book somewhere, actually. Good advertisement for him. But, like you were saying there, going through the secrets of Match of the Day, etc., you've gone through one there. What I have always wondered about is when it comes to the commentary of Match of the Day. Throughout probably my 18 years, really, of watching it, vividly, actually, I don't think I can actually ever recall many mistakes being made when it comes to the Match of the Day commentary. But like you were saying there, it's just human nature really to make mistakes. But like I said, it goes out a little bit later Match of the Day. So if you are to make a mistake, can you re-edit it at all, or is that the final version that gets sent off, your first version?
There's mistakes happen. I notice them every week on the programme from somebody.
Wow.
You may not, but I can notice them. Generally, the answer is no. There is the facility. If you, for example, if you get a goal scorer wrong, or you get the name of the team wrong, touch wood.
Yeah.
I've not done that. Touch wood. But if you did, and that would purely not because you didn't know the job, it's purely because it's a slip of the tongue. The brain sometimes does things. It would be purely a slip of the tongue. Then you would be able to do it. But it's in a live commentary, you'll notice mistakes, but the commentator just does it there and then. And nobody even thinks about it. Say, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, I meant so-and-so. And you don't even think about it. It happens. Now, what you would do on Match of the Day is you're commentating, you're live, you're at the game. It's always live commentary, always. You're not doing it afterwards, none of that. But if you did do that, if you called the goal scorer wrong, take a pause, and there and then do it again. So in the edit, obviously, they'd use the bit that's right.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no secret. There's no magic. There's no going back afterwards. Once you're done, you're done. Once the final whistle goes, you've got to get down and do those interviews. You can't be redoing it. You couldn't do it anyway because there's no crowd noise. There's no atmos. It would sound terrible. So you couldn't do it. It's all live. It's all as and then, and that's it. But any mistakes are just done naturally there and then, as happens in a live commentary that you don't even think about.
I feel like with your job specifically, doing it with the biggest teams in the world, with BBC, etc. I mean, at least with me personally, if I was to make one mistake, you just keep thinking about it. How important is it for you particularly that if you are to make a mistake, you try and move on for it as best as possible rather than keep coming back to that?
I would say it's like that in any job on earth. It has to be like that. I have a rule, and it works 100% of the time, this rule. 9 times out of 10, I will be driving home from a game and I will be thinking, oh, I could have done that better. I could have done that better. Oh, God, that goal call wasn't very good. And you'll only remember the things you think, not necessarily mistakes, but things that you could have done better, or things that you perceive yourself to be wrong in your eyes. You'll watch Match of the Day back later that night and you go, actually, it was all right, that wasn't too bad. What was I worried about? The 1 time in 10 you drive back feeling quite pleased with yourself, thinking, I've done a great one today. That's going to be great. I'll settle back and watch that. You'll watch it and go, oh no, that wasn't so good. And that works 100% of the time. That's never been any different. You are your own, I won't say worst critic, you're your own best critic, because it enables you to keep getting better at it. And nobody will be able to tell you, oh, you were terrible today. If you genuinely were, you will know. You won't need anybody to tell you. and generally they won't know what's terrible and what's good anyway. It's just what they perceive and what they hear. So no, you keep being your own critic, and that's the best way to do it.
Well, Guy, it's interesting you mentioned that because clearly I don't think it was nine bad games for you and one good game because it was turning into every good game for you. I mean, in 2010, you got a huge phone call, that being you would be BBC's main commentator, you would be taken on from the legendary commentator, John Motson. I mean, we've mentioned a few times how stress might have come into it, but taking over that job, the main job at BBC, just talk me through that phone call and how you found out about that.
Yeah, it's a great honour, and remains the case. Um, it, it wasn't quite as simple as that. There was a few of us that were already doing the job for Match of the Day, and people were talking about one of us would be getting it. But again, it's not something, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I'm pretty sure they'll be the same. You just got on with your job. You really did. And then whatever game you got chosen to do next was the game you got chosen to do next. So there was never any grand announcement. There was never any, you are now the holder of this position. That didn't happen. It just happened organically. It happened naturally. And we had the rights to the League Cup back then. I did the League Cup final that year and followed on. I did the World Cup final. But with every year that passes, we're going into next year, there's no guarantee I'll be doing England games or the World Cup final at that one. It's whoever's on form. It's whoever is the best person for the job at the time, and that's on somebody else's judgment. And it's a little bit like a manager of a football team, isn't it? You could have the best player in the world supposedly, but if they're not on form, then somebody else will be picked ahead of them, and that's the way it works, and that's the way it will continue to work and should work, quite honestly. So there's no great mantle bestowed on you. It's just you just carry on doing your job, and when the rota for the next month of games comes out, hopefully you got the ones that you want. Although, again, quite honestly, you've got to be careful about thinking which games do I want, because a lot of the time the better games will end up being elsewhere. There's an element, I think, in life, not just in this job, but the grass is always greener on the other side. So every game you've got, there'll be a better one just around the corner.
Yeah, definitely. I actually quite like that advice because it's interesting you were speaking about that, how it's really down to who's on form, really. Because that's one big thing I did think about when you were going to the World Cup, you were covering these big finals. I just wonder how producers go about picking a commentator for the right gig, I suppose. Because when it comes down to commentary, I suppose it is really so subjective, really, and whether
Entirely.
you think it's good or not.
Entirely. One man's cup of tea is another's poison, and
Is that, yeah,
it literally is. And whether it's me doing it or anybody else doing it, there will be so many people that hate it. You hope that's not the case. You'd like to please 100% of people, but that's not possible in any walk of life. As you get older, as you carry on doing it, you learn not to be bothered by that. I think, you go back 20 years, the slightest bit of criticism, I was crestfallen, and it would eat away at me for days and days and days. It still does, it still hurts, but you learn what to ignore and what to take with a pinch of salt. So it doesn't, you just get a bit more long in the tooth, I guess.
100%. I would imagine you would have got a lot of feedback for, well, when you were covering the England games for the first time. I mean, when you were
That's a good way of
covering
putting it, yeah.
Yeah, but when you were covering England, I mean, you had a pretty controversial one in your first tournament, England versus Germany.
Nothing
Wow,
controversial about it. It was about half a mile over the line. Nothing controversial about it. No, you just go with your gut on that one. You say what you see. That's the only time I would say, we were talking about the bias sort of things earlier on. The only time I am, and I still wouldn't class it as bias, I'd class it as knowing the audience, and just being myself. I'm doing it today, aren't I? This is purely by
yeah,
accident, but I'm on my holidays, so I'm in my D-Mob gear. I wouldn't recommend as a 50-odd-year-old wearing football shirts too often, but there you go. No, I'm an England fan as much as anybody else, probably more than a lot of people, and just just incredulous, just absolutely incredulous. We didn't need any goal line technology then, although that was the incident more than any other that led to it being implemented around the world. Goodness me, you could just see. It still makes me cross. Now listen, Germany beat us 4-1 and hammered us, and we're much the
yeah,
better team. Simple as that. I don't suppose, we'll never know, the result wouldn't have changed. But what you've got to remember is we're approaching half time. That would have made it 2-2.
exactly. Yeah,
It might have been a totally different game. I don't think it would have been, because I don't think England were all that good, and I didn't really rate Fabio Capello as the manager of England. I never thought his heart was really in it. So I don't suppose it would have changed anything, but we'll never know. And it was such a big moment, and it was in the back of the net, for goodness sake.
Was it really that obvious then from where you were sitting?
Straight away, on first viewing. Didn't need a replay. Straight away, you knew it was in. There was not even a question. I still can't believe it wasn't. It was just ridiculous.
To be fair, watching it back, well, I don't know how the referee didn't spot it, to be completely honest. I can't imagine what you guys were going like on the commentary for that one.
Well, when you put the microphone away from you, there was a lot of swearing going on. I was absolutely livid. And then you've got to calm down and think, hang on a minute, let's not be... But then again,
How do you get over
I remember
it? Yeah.
back in 1986 with Maradona, Barry Davies, great commentator, was never shy to, when he was annoyed, or, he was never shy to vent his opinion, and we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be. Our opinions don't really matter as such, but in a moment like that, you can't help yourself.
Well, exactly. I mean, to be fair, without that moment, you have to wonder what the ramifications of it was. Obviously, now we've gone on to add VAR, goal line technology.
Yeah, well,
That does bring to another point, actually. What are your views on VAR?
well, it's here. It's here, and it's not going anywhere else. So we just got to get on with it. It will get better all the time. It will evolve. It's still evolving. Used right, I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm with most people. I'm quite old school. I like the game to flow. I don't tend to get too upset about a bad decision, because a lot of bad decisions are subjective, and depends on which team you might prefer to win. So I don't tend to get too upset about them unless they're absolute stinkers, unless there's been a mistake made or the referee has not seen anything clearly, which is perfectly natural and understandable. Now, my understanding of VAR, it was brought in to eradicate those. We've crept into every decision being scrutinised. That's not the point. That's not the point. It's still the on-field referee, and that's what we need to remember. I think whilst it's in its infancy still, which it still is, I think there's still a tendency for referees to rely on it a bit much and think, well, this will bail me out, and not make a decision as a result. But no, it's only there to get rid of the absolute howlers, to stop Maradona punching the ball in, to stop Thierry Henry depriving Ireland of a place at a World Cup, that's, or Euros, whatever it was. That's the reason it's there. It's not there to nitpick and go, well, let's look back forensically at this, and it's. But it's there, and the refereeing bodies will undoubtedly point to a greater number of correct decisions as a result. If we get the correct decision, who cares how much time it takes? Let's have the correct decision. I just think still there's so many. It's not changed the debates. It's still so subjective, but it's not going anywhere. So we'd better damn well get used to it.
I think that's well said, Guy, actually. And like you said, it is going to be here for years. And to be honest, I think if we really wanted to, we could probably be speaking for another hour about it. So let's move on. We mentioned one poor England match. Let's fast forward to 2016, the Euros, because I would imagine that was a tough one to commentate on, England versus Iceland.
That's the most crushing blow I've ever had covering international football, and I can speak for every single member of the media that covers England in thinking the same. People that think that the press have got the knives out for England all the time and are looking for mischief and bad stories, I can tell you the atmosphere in that media centre after losing to Iceland was shock and such disappointment. Everybody was down. Nobody wanted that to happen. Nobody. It was awful. It was terrible. I felt for Roy as well, because Roy's such a decent man who did such a good job everywhere, and that's not the way it should have ended for him with England. Just a rotten result, and will go down as one of the worst in England's history, obviously, won't it? And you just had to call it as you saw it. When Wayne Rooney scores early, you think,
it's going to be an easy day. Yeah,
you can never think like that. I'm always wary now whenever England score early in a game, because we've since then had Kieran Trippier in the World Cup semi-final against Croatia, and then we had Luke Shaw in the final of the Euros. So let's not score early. Let's just leave it. I'd rather have a late one.
I suppose it's cursed jinx, actually. But going back to that Iceland game once again, I know it probably brings up bad memories, but you said about it earlier how being the England commentator, you sort of do take England's side, but once again, you can't be too biased with it. With Iceland winning that game, I still think it probably was the biggest shock in that tournament. Probably
Yeah.
one of the biggest shocks in European competition, actually. So, was it hard trying to be happy for Iceland in that sense
No,
that it was such a big underdog story?
no, not when it does sell, because when all said and done, there's the story, they've won, and they were good value for it. So no, there's none of that. You just personally, you're just disappointed, and a tournament is always better. And by the way, this is not just England. I know I've got my England shirt and all that. This is not just England. Working for the BBC, we every one of the home nations is given
Hmm.
equal. I know there were people argue, no, they're not. That's nonsense. But they are genuinely given equal importance. And I remember a game at that Euros, England against Wales, where we did the commentary, and I had Martin Keown and Robbie Savage alongside me, and I was sitting in between them, which was quite nice. And I was the neutral conduit, and I was very conscious. No, this is just as important for Wales as it is for England. So there was no fan in me in that game whatsoever. That didn't matter to me. The professional head kicked in, and this is 50-50. Those two can be, because they've played umpteen times for each of the nations, so they're fine. And actually, they were great. But you just we like it for all the home nations. And if I'm covering a Scotland, a Wales game, or a Northern Ireland game, I will be equally as wanting them to win, because it's a lot better for us when the home nations are doing really well. I actually think the same as well for a British club side in European competition. I know that's a bit more contentious, because a lot of people will say, well, I don't like Manchester City, I don't like Liverpool, I don't like Chelsea. It's a little bit different. I get that, but I still think the vast majority of your audience are watching. Well, maybe not in that case. Maybe not. Maybe not. It's an ever changing situation. It used to be the case when I was growing up, when Liverpool and Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa were in the European Cup. Generally, most of the nation wanted them to do well. I think it's changed in recent years. It's not the case anymore, but it certainly used to be.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, we'll probably talk a bit more about club football in a minute, but let's juxtapose two Euros because that 2016 one compared to the 2021, I mean, it couldn't have had a sharper contrast, really, couldn't it?
Well, the 2021 was 2021 due to COVID,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah,
So it was a strange one anyway. From start to finish, it was a very, very strange one. I've been saying that all the BBC commentaries are live at the games. Yes, they are, but that was one, no, because of COVID, etc. We did a lot of those from the studios in Salford,
Hmm?
because we couldn't travel. We couldn't travel abroad to many of them. So I spent my tournament shuttling between Wembley and the studios in Manchester, basically. That was it, because we weren't allowed to travel, or the logistics were
Wow.
basically made it impossible. So it was a strange tournament, but I was at Wembley for all the games that were there, and yeah, strange atmosphere. And the atmosphere of the final was clouded, because we knew we got wind of all the terrible trouble
Yeah,
outside before the game, and people rushing the gates and all that. So it kind of, the disappointment of that died quite quickly. If you want to bring another Euros into it, we had the last one in
yeah.
Germany, which was fantastic up until the end point. But I still maintain that Gareth Southgate did a great job overall. I've had so many arguments with people about this who say he's your mate. He would say that. No, he's not my mate. I've got to know him quite well, and I think he's a great bloke. But I think time will look back very fondly and very generously at the job that he did with England. To go from a tournament that, when I was a kid, didn't even qualify for World Cups. That was the nation. That was where we were. To getting to two semi-finals and two finals. Well, we've only ever won one thing ever, so I'll take that.
100%. I mean, you said about there, England getting to two finals. And to be fair, the two semi-finals of each of those competitions, they live long in my memory. I would imagine live very long in your memory. The Denmark one, and then, yeah, just talk us through the Denmark one first, because I remember the scenes after the game, Sweet Caroline. It seemed
Yeah,
like a
no,
brilliant.
it was wonderful, wonderful, absolutely. Yeah, and we had Harry Kane missing a penalty, scoring a penalty. We had all sorts going on.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was. They made it hard. Goodness me, they made it hard. I think I've got fonder memories of the last one. Ollie Watkins coming on
Ollie, oh, yeah.
and beating the Netherlands. That was a wonderful moment. The curious thing about particularly the last one, I probably didn't play as well in the tournament as a whole as we did in the 2021 version.
Mm.
Um, there's the odd exception, but you think back to the group games, and they made it hard, and you're relying on Jude Bellingham with an overhead kick and
Yeah,
things like that. But the big moments were there. The big moments were there, and it's always a thrill. It's always, you do get an extra little bit of a buzz when you're watching those big moments happen. And I know I can say the same for my colleague Steve Wilson when he was covering Wales against Belgium at the Euros in 2021. Great moments, absolutely wonderful moments that live long in the memory.
What goal was better to commentate on? That Jude Bellingham late bicycle kick or the Ollie Watkins one?
Probably the Watkins one because it was a semi-final. Simple as that. Um, yeah, that was special. That was lovely. That was a lovely moment. There's only a certain number of goals you can picture and see them as they happen in your head, and that's certainly one of them for me.
Oh, 100%. And I could only imagine the celebrations after that. I'm guessing all the BBC crew goes maybe to a local pub after that.
Well,
You,
there weren't many
Gareth,
of us there because obviously we were out on site and we were in where was it? Dortmund, I think. Was it in Dortmund?
Dortmund, I think it was,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, there were that many venues. So yeah, there weren't many because there weren't many of us there, and obviously it finishes so late, and then you've got to get back to your accommodation. So no, it wasn't wild and raucous at all. There's none of that. Might have had a couple of beers the next day, but then we were all set to go to Berlin for the final. So it was all getting travel plans sorted. So no, while you're there, there's not a lot. You enjoy your downtime, but there's not a lot of it. So yeah, it's not. I'd like to one year. I say I'd like to. I wouldn't really. I'd always want to be there, but you see the scenes back here, and you see all the fan parks and the beer
Yeah,
going everywhere,
go
and the
mad.
beer gardens and all that, and you sort of think, oh, I'd like to experience that once. Um, but I'd like to split myself in two if I could. But never mind. I'll take doing what I do.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I could only dream to imagine what you went through those occasions. But talking about the finals, I mean, this recent final probably not as prominent in the fact it wasn't really down to individually who lost, but that 2020, well, 2021, I'll say. Obviously, Bukayo Saka missed that penalty. I thought it was such a hard moment on Bukayo that one. But
That happens.
your
That
words
happens.
at that final, I suppose that's really what changes everyone's views on it. So I remember you, Alan Shearer, during that final. You were sort of very comforting towards Saka, but at some points, do you just, I suppose, self-realise how important your words can be in narrating how people feel towards that player?
I go back to what I said earlier. It's something you can either do or you can't in the moment, and you just come out with what you feel is right and what you feel yourself. That's all you can do, and hopefully you do get them in some way in tune with the thinking of most right-minded people in the nation. Don't really care what the idiots think, to be honest. They will think that anyway. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure the words are that important. Getting it right is important. I wouldn't say they're probably only really important if you get them badly out of tune and badly wrong. Then they become important. As long as you get them right, that's all that matters. And again, it's not something that you beat yourself up thinking about. You can only go with what's happened in front of you.
Definitely. And well, Guy, I mean, we've got a pretty big competition next year in which Thomas Tuchel will be leading the boys. I mean, how do you see that going?
Um, for a start, I hope everybody qualifies.
Yeah,
I hope all the home nations get there. It's if you'd asked me before England played Senegal, I would say we probably had a good chance, even though they haven't been brilliant under Thomas Tuchel so far. But this is to go back to what I said about Gareth Southgate. That was different. He built something. And okay, I'll go with the majority. The majority view seems to be he wasn't the right man to take that final next step. Well, Thomas Tuchel's been appointed to be that man. This is his only
yeah,
job. It's a 1.5 year deal. That the World Cup is everything. This is it. The feeling is we're not going to go back to square one of somebody building their own squad and their own identity. The squad has that. We now need the person who's won things in a short space of time everywhere he's been. And the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, that works. That
yeah.
works, and it might work. It might. I wouldn't hold too much importance on a game that's in June at the end of a long season. I know World Cups are, but they are very, very different. That is essentially friendly against a very, very good Senegal team, by the way, who wanted desperately to be the first African team ever to beat England, and they were, and rightly so. So I wouldn't hold too much importance by that, but it was a little bit worrying. Then again, I think in every walk of life, you learn more from things that don't go smoothly than you do from things that go smoothly. So hopefully, we're getting them out of the way now, and England will hopefully come good when it really matters. This is a one-shot deal. He's been brought in to do this, so we might be more critical of him than we were of Gareth Southgate. Maybe it's nothing to do with him being German, just because this is it. We know why he's there. He's got
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we'll look at that one in a bit more detail once again a little later on. But let's take you back to the last World Cup final you did cover, France versus Argentina. I mean, that's probably the best game I've ever seen. I'm not sure about you, but yeah, it seemed like a fantastic game. Game of dreams, really.
I used to always struggle with that question, what's the best game you've ever commentated on? Because I would literally very glibly and in a cliched fashion say probably the last one or hopefully the next one, because you never know. And
Yeah,
hopefully the next one still stands, but now, yeah, I'd go say, yeah, everything about that was wonderful. It was just a great game, a great game. I loved everything about it. And the two big players on
yeah.
the field and in the world both came to the party. Mbappe and Messi were just wonderful. Yeah, great night.
You mentioned a little earlier in the podcast about how you didn't really script too much going into these finals. I mean, do you script anything when it comes to such a big giant winning the World Cup and being Messi?
Never mind script too much. I don't script anything at all.
Wow.
Um,
So just all
slight
improvisation.
caveat to that. Slight caveat to that. Only literally a skeleton script for the opening when Gary Lineker, as it has been, and whoever it will be in the future, hands over at the start. I like to know what I'm saying then because the action hasn't started, so I'm not actually commentating. I've got to have somewhere to go as a lead-off point. So I'll have a skeleton idea of what I'm going to say at that point. It will probably involve a few, I don't know, historical facts or something, or just to set the scene. But from that point on, what happens, happens. There are no words pre-prep. There can't be. And the ultimate example to that is probably the best piece of commentary ever, in this country certainly viewed as that way, was the 1966 World Cup final. Kenneth
Yeah.
Wolstenholme would not have known that there'd be a couple of people running on the field as Jeff Hurst is running through, and he's lining, well, hang on a minute, there's people on the pitch, they think it's all over. And then what a sense of timing. Bang, it is now. I mean, it's just wonderful. But you can't, that is the perfect example of how great commentary cannot be pre-prepped. You can't do it. You don't know how it's going to pan out.
You've mentioned iconic lines there. I want to take you back to one of probably your most iconic lines. I'm not sure if you would have realised in the time as well, but it was the Manchester Derby and the camera pans to Sir Alex Ferguson. I think you said they would never go into favourites in their time for Alex Ferguson. Now it's every time. I mean, that quote, probably without even thinking at the time, it had everything comedy, but also painted a picture.
There's no comedy intended about it. There's nothing. It I had that quote in my notes. Part of my prep, I've got pages and pages of stuff, and I'd had it in for a couple of Manchester derbies actually. That it was there, but I never had cause to reference it or anything. And just the camera panned onto Sir Alex, obviously not happy with what he was watching. And I just glanced, I saw that, and there we go. He did say that once. Well, this is true. This is
Yeah.
I don't know how many wins in a row it was for City at the time, but that was true. So it's not. It wasn't to me. It's not a big deal. It was just a line over a cutaway, which worked, and that's all you've got to try and do.
Can you sense when one of those lines will instantly become iconic?
No, no, no. What works for you might not work for somebody else. So no, it's not something that's automatic. You just say what you think is right at the time. For 75-80% of the cutaways, which you get in every game that you're commentating on, you might not have much to say, quite honestly. But at a moment like that, when City are ahead in the Manchester derby and you get a shot of the great man, that worked. But again, it's just what came to me at the time. On another occasion, if I hadn't been on top of my game, I might have gone to Alex Ferguson there, not very happy with what he's seeing. It could have been something as bland as that. It might have been, but I just used what I had at the time. But it's not, again, it's just not, it's not. We have a tendency to overthink how commentary works. Commentary is just one person saying what they feel, or trying to get it into the right way of saying it to match the pictures. That's all it is. There's nothing more complicated than that. That's it.
To be fair, I think it's so magical, like the way you speak about it and the way it comes along. I mean, it is literally just magic what a commentator does, especially with you. And we're speaking about iconic lines, some of the ones you've done. I mean, you've done a few ones recently in a bit of an unorthodox manner, shall we say, because that is, I'm pretty sure it's probably the last recent years, but you have gone to a pretty famous game, formerly FIFA and now known as EAFC. I'm not sure how much you would have played of the game when you were younger, but everyone my age, that's the dream, really.
Well, on that, I've got to go in a few minutes because I'm doing another 5 hours of recording for FC26 this very
Really?
day.
Wow.
So I'm off to do that off the back of doing this. So yeah, it's great. It's a great honour to do it. It's great fun to do it. It's a long process and it's an ongoing process. It never ends. It's not like one game finishes and the next one begins. We are
Yeah.
constantly laying down lines and lines and lines for recording. Let's be honest, the scenarios are endless. This
Yeah.
replicates real football. You've got to cover everything, so it never actually ends. Yeah, another 5 hours ahead of me today.
Blimey, yeah, because I would imagine that be going into FC26.
It is,
I
yeah.
can only imagine how long that would take because originally I just thought it was like all AI, so it would form things based off the little quotes you said. I didn't realize you actually go into the studio, so and I
Oh
think
yeah.
you do really do every statement. So how does that come along? Is that like what you said there? Try and once again do it improvised based on some of the gameplay you
Yeah,
see.
we have a scenario. There will be a scenario. Not the example I'll give is, let's be honest. It could be a bland moment such as Team X is just crossing the halfway line. We don't know if there's anything going to happen with it yet. It might be a promising attack, but we don't know. So you might say, Liverpool crossing halfway. What could they do from here? But we want 20 different ways of saying that. So you've then got to think on your feet, and you're not watching anything, so it's hard to get inspiration.
Yeah.
And you get to about 10 different ways, and you can't do any more. And then you might come up with one that you think is really good, and the producer will say, "We can't have that." And I'll say, "Well, that's really good." And he goes, "It is in broadcast, but in the game, it will be really annoying because people are going to hear that a lot, and they'll get fed up with it. It's almost too good. It's too niche. So you've got to try and be not bland, but on the
Yeah.
edge of something that stands up to repetition. That's not going to get on people's nerves too much. So there's more to it than people think, but it's a long, long, long process. And saying people's names in 35 different ways is yeah. Literally
Wow.
Messi, 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 literally it's just every single different way you can think of saying the name, and that's where maybe in the future AI will come in, and the less creative aspects of the game, the names might be, maybe they'll be able to do something with that, but right now it's all down to us.
Well, Guy, like I said there, I'm not too sure how much you play FIFA on a regular basis, but
I
there
do
has
actually,
been
funny enough.
you play it quite a bit. I was
I
going to
do,
say,
but I play it with Derek. Derek's the commentator when I play
oh
it
wow,
because
yeah,
I don't play it listening to myself because there's some sort of psychological test I'm sure that you could put onto that because I don't think it's healthy when you're sitting playing it and you've got your
and
own
you're
voice
hearing
coming at you
yourself,
and
yeah.
you're telling yourself where to go or to shut up, and that's happened. So for that reason, when I play it, I have Derek's voice on.
I was going to say, I have to be honest, Guy. I mean, you're a great, great guy, but there has been a few times in this FC where you've absolutely killed me.
Of
I've
course.
conceded a last-minute goal. Guy, not the right time to be saying it, mate.
No, absolutely, no, absolutely. But believe me, it's nothing to do with me when it comes out. Yeah, it's good fun to do, and you can have a little bit of artistic license. And the sessions that I do with Sue Smith and with Stuart Robson, they're really good fun as well because you can bounce off one another and maybe just push it a bit far. And I have I have snuck 2 or 3 lines in just to try and see that are in the game now. I won't tell you what they are, but
Wow.
I've got 2 or 3 just to see if they'll pass the producer and that they have done. So one of them was for a great friend of mine, my former producer Matt, who sadly passed away 2 years ago, and his son played the game all the time, and Matt used to say to me, "Oh, get that in before you," and so I made sure that phrase was in, and whenever I hear it, it's a lovely warm feeling.
I have to admit, that is absolutely class. I mean, you said about there, you play the game quite a bit. What do you make of your virtual self then? Pretty uncanny?
It's very flattering. It's ridiculously flattering. I look 20 years younger, so thanks to them for that. I had to have a lot of green dots put over myself for
Oh,
photos that we did. There's a lot of that, which I think is
wow.
what they do with the players to get a proper lifelike lifelike representation. I don't know what went wrong with mine, but it went very right. Um, yeah, it's a great thing to do. It's great fun. Yeah, hopefully it'll continue for a little while. Yeah, it is the best game to play. It's the only game I play. I've sort of gone beyond playing on the console these days. I don't have enough time to do it, but when I do, it's the only game I ever play, and I'm quite nerdy about it. I have to play real teams. I can't do the ultimate team. I can't do
Yeah.
it. I have to play a real. No, it's real. It's real when I do it. And what I do, which is very nerdy, on a Friday evening, I will regularly play the game I'm going to commentate on the next day.
Wow,
I don't know if
really?
that helps or not, but I'll try and guess what the lineups might be, pick those teams accordingly, and then play it. The downside to that
Oh, yeah.
is it never pans out the way it will in real life because I'll
Too
always
fast
lose.
paced.
So whoever I choose to represent, I'll generally go with the home team. It's always an away win because I'm not all that good at it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because I suppose, I mean, FIFA is getting more realistic every year. And then when you're seeing all
FC,
the different faces,
FC.
FC, sorry, yeah, FC. Yeah, I'm glad you picked
FIFA are
up
no
on
longer
that.
getting the benefit of millions and millions of pounds.
Yeah, exactly. But like you were saying there, you see constant improvements among the game every year. I suppose it does actually really help when it does come to doing commentary the next day in terms
I
of
think so. I
visualizing
think
those
just maybe
images.
just to reaffirm in your head the positions that each player plays in. It might do nothing, I don't know, but I just enjoy playing it anyway.
Oh, well, that's amazing, Guy. And when you're down at the EA studios later, you have to recommend on my name. Say, yeah, I've got a young commentator here coming for my job. I mean, I'm free for FC 26, so any voice lines? Yeah, happy to do them.
There
But
you go.
yeah,
Yeah, send a
yeah,
tape.
yeah, I'll have to send a tape into you, forward it on. I mean, I've got a little demonstration here. Yeah. Guy, I'm down on pitch side. I've just witnessed an extraordinary goal. Jude Bellingham with the bicycle kick, top corner. Absolute fantastic. England going through. Back to you, Guy, in the press box.
Yeah, okay, that'll work. That'll
What
work.
did you rate it then, Guy?
Yeah,
Good
that's
enough
all
for
right.
you?
That's all right. That'll work. That'll work. That'll work in the game. That'll be fine.
Well, I think it's confirmed, guys. James McIntosh and Guy Mowbray on your next
I wish
FC
I had
get.
that power.
Oh, nah, extraordinary stuff. And then, Guy, just to really round off this episode, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. But I've got few quick fire questions here. And I
Okay,
think it actually might make you think a few of these because, yeah, they're struggling ones and some really juicy ones to start with. So, ready for it?
go on. Go for it.
Okay, this is quite a tasty one to begin with. The best goal you've ever commentated on?
I'm going to struggle with these quick fire ones. I really am. Oh, goodness me. Honestly, blank. Blank.
Oh,
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I tend to forget very, very quickly. I'll tell you what, from recent memory, Declan Rice's free kicks against Real Madrid, because they're
oh, yeah.
the most recent ones that have actually knocked me, absolutely stunned me. So those two.
To be fair, they were spectacular, and to get
Probably the
through.
second one. Probably the second one was.
Yeah, the second. That was the one where he shot towards Courtois, wasn't it? Top right corner.
Oh, and it's the closest I've been in a
Spectacular.
commentary to actually swearing.
Really?
Actually
Wow.
live. I very nearly came out with it. Very nearly. It got stuck
Well,
in my throat, thank goodness, because it shows it's a natural instinct.
oh, I'm glad you said that there because that's actually one of my next questions. Have you ever done anything bad when it comes on the commentary, like sworn, done
No,
anything?
I've never sworn, but or I might have done, but nothing bad. And yeah, I'm sure I will have done, but I'm nothing that's libelous or slanderous or no, nothing to be. You go onto autopilot a little bit. The one thing I will say on this, just very very quickly, I really have to go in a minute, but I have a big beef with. I only heard it the other day, watching cricket again, and when you hear bad language on the field, and the Ofcom have this ridiculous regulation in that the broadcaster has to then apologise for it. If you are going to put microphones out there in the middle, be it a cricket match, be it a football match, at high level, top level sport, and you have microphones picking up everything, please treat the viewers with a little bit of common sense and credibility. People know, they're not idiots. People know, and all you're doing is drawing more attention to it. And if you missed it,
Exactly.
if you're
Yeah.
like me, you'll go and rewind it. Oh, I missed that. What did he say? What did she say? And you go back and you'll have a
Yeah.
listen. So please just stop it. If you have to, put a thing on the crawling graphic at the start of a program saying this program may contain bad language. Yeah, honestly, you can't.
Just common
It's
sense.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just I find it so annoying. And when you're told you have to, your heart sinks because people will then naturally shout at the telly, going, "What is he
Yeah.
apologising for?" We have to. We're told we have to. I don't want to do it. I really don't want to do it with every fibre of my being. So they have to change those regulations.
Oh, I do agree with you on that one.
And by the way,
That
I'm not a
makes
swearer.
sense.
I'm not saying I don't like it particularly. But listen, if Ben Stokes is out for naught or for cheaply,
Yeah, yeah,
If the England captain doesn't swear on his way off the field, quite frankly, I'd be disappointed with him.
yeah. Sometimes you have to show emotion. I
Yeah.
mean, it's sport, isn't it?
Doesn't
I
mean you're going
mean,
to be coming out with
yeah.
it every 5 minutes.
Exactly, exactly. Well, you mentioned changing the regulations on that one. This actually is a very interesting one. I want to hear your take on this one. How about changing the regulations when it comes to broadcasting, in a sense? Rather than doing your traditional one, could we ever see Guy Mowbray do a Brazilian commentator for one of the
No,
goals, where they go, "Go!"
not a chance. Not a chance. Couldn't do it. Don't have the lungs. Not a chance.
Oh, to be fair, it's quite a funny one actually. Some great commentary from Brazilians there. And then just to round it off, really, Guy, I think this is going to be one that's going to be hard to think about here. Your best ever memory when it comes to football, whether it's doing commentating or as a fan.
Immediately, the one that comes to my head was when I was 12 years old and York City beat Arsenal 1-0 in the FA Cup. And
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
there from first light, helping put straw on the pitch, clear the ice off the pitch, making sure the game was on as a junior red. And then Keith Houchin scores the winner with virtually the last kick of the game. York City beat Arsenal. We beat Arsenal. At the time, we were what is now League One. We were a third division team, so it wasn't the gulf that there is now. But that, I remember queuing up all night for the tickets, overnight outside with friends and one of the fathers. And then we drew Liverpool in the next round, did the same again, the process repeated. And as a 12, 13-year-old, we played Liverpool 2 years running. As a 12, 13-year-old, it didn't get better than that. It just didn't get better. That I think was where I already had a love of football. I was already obsessed with it, but I think that's where everything came in, and I realised, this is me.
Yeah.
This is what I'll be. Whatever I'm doing in my life, this is part of my life. And it turned out it was everything in my life, and good.
Crazy to think about from that moment and going on to do such big things in your life. And Guy, this is a bit of a cheeky one for me just to round it off. Next year is England winning the World Cup.
Maybe.
Staying on the fence? No, yes?
Just a maybe.
I don't think I'll get out of you. Typical interviewer here. But yeah, absolute pleasure to have you on, Guy. I must say, this has probably been one of my favourite episodes. I've really enjoyed this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, guys, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
Cheers.